Hello and welcome to Hubrix Designs and Cafe. My name is Sarah Hubrix and I am the founder and author of most of the content that's going to be shared on the Hubrix and Designs and Cafe notebook. So today's topic is about becoming the CEO of my health. And so this is me sharing a bit of my personal journey. And I also am sharing some of the stuff that if you've been in my Facebook community, you've seen at least at a high level, but this is me digging in deep and starting to share the details and the specifics that have come up throughout the years. Today's topics, we're going to dig in and literally dig into digging deep, learning your numbers, being persistent, and also being resilient and creative, and how I applied that to becoming the CEO of my own health. I am going to start with a disclaimer because I will be talking about medical numbers and data along the way. So the content posted on Hubrix Designs and Cafe website or any social media channels by Dr. Sarah or guest authors is presented solely for general informational, educational, and entertainment purposes. The use of information on the site, in the videos or resources, or any materials linked from them is at the user's own risk. It is not intended as a substitute for the advice of a healthcare professional, medical doctor, psychotherapist, or other qualified professional diagnosis or treatment. Users should not disregard or delay in obtaining medical advice for any medical or mental health condition they may have and should seek the assistance of their healthcare or medical professionals for any such conditions. Thank you. So digging deep. My journey has been really since I got out of the Navy. And so I am going to start with how it is I became the advocate, or how I really started focusing on having to become the advocate and CEO of my health. And that really began aggressively back in 2019. I am a visual person, so you are going to find out as I share some information within here on where I was at and how things were going. So when I moved to Ohio, I was probably in the best health situation that I had been in quite some time. By January of 21, we had the COVID lockdown. I was working remotely. So by January, as things started opening up a little bit, I definitely was feeling the effects of it. Fast forward another year, and by February of 22, I was definitely at the highest weight I had ever been. I had limited energy. My focus was a struggle. I wasn't able to exercise because of how I felt and just all of the side effects of this. I regularly was having migraines, which wasn't abnormal for me, but it had definitely escalated again from what I had already been, what I thought was on the path to healing. And that's just a few of the things that really jumped out at me. By February of 2022, I was working with the VA health system here in the Ohio, Cleveland area. And I had worked with one endocrine doctor in particular, but wasn't making any headway. And so I reached out to the head of the endocrine department for an appointment. And I was very disappointed to learn that even though she's a female, and I thought that I was or at least I should say I'd hoped I was gonna make some progress, and that she would maybe understand what I was going through. Unfortunately, she blamed it on the fact that I was 50 years old at that time and informed me that we just need to accept that as we age, things just won't be the same. So in other words, that weight that I had gained to the point where I don't have pictures of me during this from 21 into 22. I basically became a hermit, and in many ways, I joke about that, but in all seriousness, I did not socialize because I did not want to be seen. I struggled to be on cameras at that point, even though I was teaching remotely and working remotely. Everything about it. The first picture that I could find was from April 2022. And when this picture was posted on Facebook by one of my friends, it hit hard. it was embarrassing because that wasn't me. I was blown up. It was all weight. Or water weight just in there. And nothing I did was helping. And by April, I've given and invested in a treadmill at the beginning of February. I had started actively walking because that was the extent of what I could do. I tried some hiking things with some inclines. I couldn't even make it up those inclines, and I had to adjust my treadmill from the system. So my body had completely shut down from the norm of what it should be. And it's not acceptable to be told that. I just need to accept that as my new norm. So needless to say, I am through my doctoral research, and before that even, I can't even blame it on that, but I am a numbers person. I am a researcher by trade. It is what I do. So I have been lucky enough, and for various reasons, I've had to track my data. I'm going to begin sharing in this particular video some of my cholesterol numbers because this is something we've monitored. It's a hereditary thing, at least that's what's assumed. Family history of heart attacks, all that good stuff. So it's been the numbers that I have been able to have the doctors through the years track. I do have about a 12 or 13 year gap over on the left side as of yet. I'm still trying to get that from Aurora back in Wisconsin. So hopefully I will get that data soon. But this is where I had to start learning how to dig deep into my numbers, start looking for patterns, start looking for connections between pieces of my life. Ultimately, I had to learn to be persistent. Again, I had to become that CEO of my own health and be able to communicate what I was experiencing, but have the data to support that as well. I've mentioned I have tried working with the medical field and tried to get the connections to that and have them help me solve this. So I'm going to go super fast to make sure this video doesn't get too long, but back in 2010, I did give in, and because I wasn't making the progress I wanted with my own diet and exercise and everything, and the numbers did drop, but then they consistently came back up. So in 2011, when I moved to the Pacific Northwest, I ended up removing all of my medications, again, working with a medical doctor. Birth control is something that has regularly come up, so I did dig into what I was on at certain points. Moving here to Ohio, steroids were definitely something that was blamed, and 2 points since I moved here to Ohio, which may explain why I had such a discrepancy in how things had been, because that could have disrupted things within my body, and especially when it was 2 years in a row and it just skyrocketed, and something definitely went awry with my body. And that's why at that point I was working with the endocrine doctor. He kept blaming birth control, so fine, let's just remove that, and took that off out of the equation. Potassium is something that is another number that I've regularly monitored. I try to control it with my diet, wasn't making that progress, so I did get him to prescribe potassium for me, and I did find some relief from that. The other thing that I was led to was a thyroid connection. Again, there is some hereditary elements of that, so I definitely was monitoring that, except for me, it was on the hypothyroid side because my numbers were on the absolute bottom of the range that was deemed acceptable. That did help, and you will see initially I do credit that with that number there, but it definitely was not the full influence. And then in February, that should actually be, I ended up at the endocrine appointment with the head, and that's when she shared her wonderful support with me. Digging another layer, this is where knowing the numbers, starting to connect the dots between things, doctoral study impact, my training, my exercise. Again, I've mentioned I have been a runner my entire life. I started in 8th grade where I started racing. Back in 2015, I actually completed a 5K half marathon. IT-band acted up. Same thing happened to me when I was feeling better, and I will explain in a moment why this happened and how these numbers came to be. Made it almost to the end of the training cycle, and IT-band acted up. After COVID times, I did end up in my neighborhood just to get out and about. I did start running and trained for a marathon. More data, because again, I need to have the evidence, and I had to be able to talk to the doctors and say, here's what's going on. And as they started debating with me on things, I needed to have more and more of that data along with me. So body fat percentage, when we start looking at these numbers, the number for the weight can always be dismissed, and I get it. It's about how you feel more than it is those actual numbers, but those numbers become important when you're trying to fight for your health. And I literally use that word fight purposefully. And we again can have a whole conversation about blood pressure and what has happened to that as a result of this process. So, but what you'll see is, and again, body fat percentages are debated. And according to this right now, my recommended or ideal body fat is 25.4. At least since I got this scale, I've never hit that. And so I debate that. And for me personally, I would be happy if the 29-30-ish is the range that I would like to see it be in, because that is when my ideal body and how I feel is at its best. I am getting closer, and I'm really excited that I've been able to make that progress personally. But again, these are my numbers, and there are different protocols that I've tried. There's different things that I've done, different nutrition, all sorts of factors that came in or that have come into this. I'm more than happy to share or talk about them. If you want, we can schedule a time. Please do reach out for that. But as you can see, I've had to be resilient, and I actually have had to be creative through this process. Here again, I'm going to dig into a little bit of that nutrition. I do like to pinpoint that. So digging in right before I moved to Ohio, I stumbled on a nutrition system, and I followed the protocol to the T. As you can see, it had a positive impact. This was only a month and a half in, but at the 4-month mark on that protocol, I had huge success. The doctors could not believe it. We had great conversations about that. And I stayed consistent, and I'm still consistent with that. However, in 2022, I started working with a functional doctor at the beginning of this. So that's where this is about February, March of 22. And through the extensive labs from that, we identified my electrolytes, ferritin, as 2 key factors in this story. Last summer, I went on a strict AIP elimination diet for this course of the summer to identify triggers for me. And luckily for me, I was already on task with that. And most of the things that we identified, I knew about and either had chosen not to strictly eliminate them, or they weren't something I need to extensively or completely remove from my diet. But I definitely feel better if I do. So I'm more aware of that now that we've tested all that stuff. Since then, so last year, I ended up adding moringa, and I started, iodine came into my radar, and started monitoring that, and with some different protocols for that as well, and have seen, as you can see, some great success with this. So again, I'm going to just put that disclaimer up here again. I am sharing this outside of my Facebook community because those of you that have been in that community have seen elements of this through the years, but I've never dug into the specifics of what are the protocols, what are the different things that I've been doing through the years. And that's what with Hubrix Designs and Cafe, the cafe part of it, I intend to start sharing more of my notes and my research and my journey and the details of it. So I do this in hopes that other people that have dealt with similar issues, like I didn't even talk about IBS and the fact that it's IBS-D, which isn't heavily talked about online, but that has been a key factor too. So I will at a later date get into that. But again, I'm happy to talk with anyone and share the specifics of the protocol. But again, I am not a medical doctor. I am sharing this from a research standpoint in hopes of helping anyone and everyone that might be dealing with similar issues and to help reduce the time it takes for you to get to answers. So thank you for listening, and I hope that you have an amazing day.